obviously how talented they are. We have talented players too, and tried to look at it and put ourselves in the best matchups. And they did some really good things. They had really good players, and it felt like no matter who they got the ball to, he was able to do something with it. They're a good football team.
Other things you couldn't appreciate until you saw them live today to get a sense of just how dangerous they are?
I think what I was most impressed with going through it was we knew what we wanted to take away. We wanted to not give up a big shot over the middle. We wanted to make them throw checkdowns, and they took them. And then they ran a couple more screens because we were closing the middle a little bit more. And tried to counteract that with some things, but they did a really good job of just taking what we were going to give them and running with it.
Your linebackers have been so important this season. It seemed like they were trying to maybe get them out of the middle, get them out in pass coverage, things like that. Did you feel like that was part of their attack, or was that just kind of the nature of things?
I think if you look at our defense and what do you want to do, you want to get the ball away from Nick Martin. You're good with McCall Oliver. We activate Colin a lot as our fourth rusher, so reading him and throwing screens off of him is something they did pretty well. Running the football early, I thought we did a pretty good job of letting those guys fit. So they just said, okay, we're not going to beat our heads against the wall. We're going to throw the ball out here on the perimeter and let our guys that are really fast try to get some edge and try to get positive yards. Even when we were there and we make the play, you're like, okay, great. You look up, it's like, God, dog, it's 2nd and 6. Like, they're fast.
Are you able to appreciate the success that you guys did have, even though we're sitting here after a loss?
Part of me wants to say yes right now, as hard as it is. And as disappointed as I am, and as frustrated as I am, but to say that I'm not proud of our team and that I'm not appreciating it right now, I think would be a detriment to them. It would let them know how much I appreciate them. You watch what our guys go through. I mean, our kids practice hard. Our kids practice every day. We have guys on that field defensively that didn't miss a rep of practice. Trey Rucker hasn't missed a rep of practice since August. Not like, he hasn't. No, he hasn't missed a day. He hasn't missed a rep. He had an AC sprain. He put on a green jersey in practice. Kendall Daniels missed 1 day with a high ankle sprain. Nick Martin missed 1 day with a high ankle sprain. And we've got guys that are just warriors, and that's just naming a few. Our defensive line, I don't think we've had anyone sitting on the bikes missing practice. So I appreciate what our players have done, and I am so proud to coach them. And very happy with the end result tomorrow. Right now, this stings. But tomorrow, you have to sit back and really appreciate what we've done and the fact that we got here. Now we got to figure out what we need to do to get better so we can get back here and continue to do things the right way.
With a few weeks until those bowl practices and then the offseason, what's on the top of your list of priorities before then?
I'm going to self-scout even more so than I normally do. Really trying to look at formation recognition, look at what other teams do successfully that looks similar to us, figure out who we're playing, figure out what they're going to do to attack, trying to make sure we can execute at the highest level when we do get into the opportunity to play a bowl game, and then keep just building our guys with technique. I think this is a great opportunity. I've never done it. We had bowl games in Emporia State. We would get about 6 or 7 practices. We use it like spring ball. So our young guys get a lot of reps. So I think that's a very good advantage that we'll get is really looking at our scheme, saying what we liked, what was worked well for us this year, what do we need to keep teaching to our young players so that we can continue to move forward and get better from this.
Is self-scouting hard to do in the middle of the season, in the middle of the week, right before a game?
It's a balancing act. You want to make sure you're not looking too much into it because you don't want to chase ghosts, but you got to make sure you're seeing what they see from an offensive perspective. That's where I've been very fortunate to have some good people in the room that see things as well, so we can all sit there and look at it. And Coach Gundy does a good job. He gives us an offensive perspective all the time. This is what I see offensively. This is what I would do. So you try to make sure you're not being too predictable, trying to change things up, which I thought we've done a good job of. Just got to keep, like I said, stacking solid days.
How much did that hurt losing Corey, and how do you think your young DBs held up after he left?
Our young DBs battled. They do a great job. It hurt losing Corey. If you'd say it didn't, I'd be lying to you. I mean, Corey Black is our best corner. He's a great football player. He's a leader for us. He's a guy that we look to do the things that he's done so well all year. We are lucky to have Corey Black, and to see him go down, really, I mean, on the first drive, I don't know what play had happened, but I know they said he tried to tough through it, and all of a sudden he just didn't feel good. So that hurt.
How do you feel like in your first full season, 13 games, your 3-3-5 scheme is kind of held up at this level?
I think it's done well. I think we've kind of morphed it a little bit more to be more 4 down at certain times, and I've got to figure out the balancing act and make sure we're not going too much away from it, but not forgetting who we are and not becoming too one-dimensional. How can we stay the course? How can we stay multiple and still get what we do? Because if you look at us on film, I mean, we looked a lot different each game with what we wanted to do, what was the best plan. So building from that, and just we got to get better.
Is experience in that 3-3-5 scheme something you're going to be looking for when you start recruiting and you start going into the portal?
No. I think you look for good football players and you match them up to what we do and who we are. So playing, at the end of the day, playing in our scheme is great, but we play this coverage from different X's. So if you can play football and you're a good football player, we can teach you how to line up and be in our show.
You always tell us today's the worst we're ever going to be. How do you evaluate your young secondary at this point in the season?
Same way. Today's the worst we'll ever be. There are days they had great days. They battle. They fight. When you look at it and you say, we know we went up against that team and they've got a lot of talent on the perimeter. And I think at one point you looked that year, you had sophomore, freshman. It's like, man. And they battle. They don't back down. They're not afraid of any kind of competition. I mean, you saw Kale, we brought pressure and they threw a fade on Kale. Kale was right there with him competing for the ball. So I think we've got a bright future.
Was the matchups against some of Texas's experienced wideouts a problem for any of those guys?
No, I wouldn't say it individually like that. No, they're just a good football team.
Bryan, you guys showed a knack to be able to come back the past 2 weeks. What did Texas do that made it so difficult to do that today?
They had one play that's going to stand out to me. I think what it really came down to was, I mean, we didn't get off field on third down the way we need to. They were 10 of 16, and it's like, shoot, if you don't get off field on third down. Then they had a couple fourth down conversions, which has been something we've been really strong on. And they bunched up and did a little pick stuff and trying to stop the run and try to force a negative play. And I think that the conversions on third down really were, you get them to third and long, you get them to those situations, we have to get off the field. And we had been better at that really in the last 4 weeks. So that was the first time we really felt like, God, dog, couldn't get anything really going. And I think that's the thing that they did the best to keep us from allowing to get our feet back underneath us the way we wanted to.
Well, you said there was one play that's going to stick with you?
The one play that stuck with me was the long touchdown run, the longest run they had. We had a motion adjustment that we put in, and it worked really well. And they did something earlier in the game that didn't hurt us, but we saw it, we needed to do something. They came right back to it, they motioned, then they motioned back. And it just was that little bit of hesitation that popped in. It's like we were holding up well in the run game. Our kids had a lot of confidence in what we were doing. And that play right there just was like, God. And I think before that was a couple third downs, but that's the play that's going to stick with me and bother me for the rest of the next 12 months.
One of the guys you mentioned earlier was Martin. He just did a press conference with an ice pack on his head. How much does his toughness play into what he was able to accomplish this season, and especially today as well?
He's one of the toughest, most physical, smartest, dedicated football players I've ever been around, and he is exactly where he is because of that toughness, because of that attitude that you see up there on the stage.
How much of a difference maker was their abundance of speed? To the naked eye, it looked like there was just a lot of speed.